Do we have any data on the semen quality affecting urinary tract infection in females?
I'm going to look it up, but I know clinically, and I know you've seen the same thing, that we'll hear that story all the time of where everything's fine and then boom, they have sex, and then all of a sudden they have a UTI.
Yeah, I know in men,
Here it
like
is.
what?
So here's the study right here:
Yeah,
semen culture and the assessment of genitourinary tract infections. In the male, it says here is contributes approximately 50% of the cases.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if nutrient deficiency has a lot to do with it because I know zinc is very high in semen, right? Very important for the health of the sperm, and I know zinc also has some antibacterial, antiviral qualities to it. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone's more nutritionally deficient, they're going to have less zinc in the semen, and that less zinc will make it harder, make it easier for bacteria and other critters to grow. So just a thought. Again, we try to, high level thinking. What's the mechanism? Look at all the downstream signals. That could be one component, though.
Yeah, it's talking about these different types of bacteria in this male study, talking about how it plays a role in genital tract infections, and some of these are natural inhabitants of the male urethra, which can contaminate semen during ejaculation. So there's your answer. The
So it's
bacteria
almost
may
like men
end up
could have like a subclinical kind of UTI
exactly.
that could be affecting it. So if you're a female having chronic UTI issues, you have to have your partner looked at or addressed. And we'll
And
talk
so
about natural strategies. Of course, keeping sugar down is going to be one of the big ones because one of the biggest bacteria involved in UTI is going to be E. coli. So E. coli, you'll see it high in bacterial imbalances in the gut. You can also see, I think, some Pseudomonas in some, as well as some Klebsiella, but it's mostly going to be E. coli.
yeah, they were talking about E. coli and even mycoplasma in that study, which is kind of
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
So
Yep. That's
So
a big
some
one for sure.
partners, some families or couples, they'll end up just going to using condoms because obviously that's gonna work and that's gonna prevent
Yep. Create a
the
barrier.
transfer. But really, the better thing is to get the health of your spouse improved. And so, if you're a female who's done some of the conventional strategies, let's kind of go into that now in some of the conventional stuff that's being done, and we'll compare it to the functional strategies. But if you've done some of this stuff and you're still struggling, that's when it's time to get your spouse on board. And I know you and I, we really like to work with couples, and we like to get the whole family healthier together
Yeah.
because we find that if we just focus on the female, that her results are not as good. And this actually kind of carries over into H. pylori and all the work you and I do with gut infections, because we see cases where a female will use herbs successfully to eradicate certain infections in the gut. She'll then get reinfected from the spouse, even not intimate,
Yep.
just sharing cups, spoons, drinks, kissing, and then they'll get reinfected. So as much as I can, I'm trying to bring the husband on board into these health protocols.
Yeah. So a couple of things out of the gates that men can do to help support their women is cut the sugar out of their diet, or at least drop it down to the point where you're not growing some of the microbes in the urinary tract. That's helpful. You can also add some things in, like ginger is actually very helpful. So maybe some ginger kombucha could be good, or some really strong ginger tea is wonderful. You could also add a little bit of Manuka honey because there's a lot of data on Manuka actually decreasing E. coli and staph in the urinary tract. So these are some simple, kind of easy things. You could even take some raw cranberry juice. Raw cranberry juice is very high in D-mannose, which is a large sugar molecule. The body does not digest, but it creates like a magnet-like effect. It's like dragging a magnet across a surface and grabbing iron filings and pulling them out. Think of the iron filings as the E. coli. And so it kind of pulls them out. So those are some easy, simple strategies for men out of the gates is ginger, cranberry. I would say just making sure you're hydrated enough, right? Solution to pollution is dilution. Manuka and keeping the sugar down. Those are excellent strategies out of the gates.